Ladies and gentlemen, every great innovation begins not with a machine, not with a code, not with a line of mathematics, but with a feeling, something invisible, something that pulls at the mind until it breaks through the walls of logic. And behind that force, often unseen, there is a person, someone who becomes more than just a companion. They become a mirror, a catalyst, a muse. Tonight, I want to explore something that science rarely dares to measure: the mysterious relationship between emotion and creation, between love and logic, between the heart and the mind that changes the world. Because when we ask, who is the woman Elon Musk calls his muse, we're not merely talking about one individual. We're asking a deeper question: what is it, or who is it, that awakens genius in the human spirit? We often picture the visionary as a lone figure, staring into the future, solving equations, launching rockets. But neuroscience tells a different story. The human brain does not innovate in isolation. It requires emotional fuel, the chemistry of connection, dopamine, oxytocin, norepinephrine. These are not just love chemicals, they are the molecules of motivation, the biological currency of creativity. When you fall in love, your brain doesn't just light up, it reorganizes. Circuits of fear deactivate, circuits of imagination ignite. And so, perhaps it's not surprising that some of the most revolutionary minds, from Nikola Tesla to Steve Jobs, from Picasso to Beethoven, all had someone who drew from them a level of brilliance that logic alone could never unlock. A muse is not always a lover. Sometimes she is a mystery, a symbol, an ideal, a person who reflects the dreamer's deepest hunger for meaning. When we talk about Elon Musk, the man who wants to colonize Mars, electrify the Earth, and build bridges between brain and machine, we often focus on his intellect. But intellect alone doesn't drive a person to that edge of human possibility. Something emotional, something personal, always does. There is always a why behind the what. And sometimes that why wears a human face. There's a curious truth hidden in neuroscience. The same parts of the brain that light up when we are in love are activated when we're solving problems we deeply care about. Passion and purpose are neurologically intertwined. When you love something or someone, your mind becomes a precision instrument. You notice details you never noticed before. You connect patterns others overlook. You take risks most people would never take. It's no wonder, then, that many innovators speak of a person who inspires them. Not because of what that person does, but because of what they awaken within. The muse doesn't give the creator ideas, she gives him permission to feel, to let emotion guide intellect. In many ways, the woman Elon Musk calls his muse might not even be a single woman. She could be an embodiment of beauty, of curiosity, of chaos, of love itself. The idea of the muse, in this context, is a psychological archetype, a symbol of the part of us that calls the genius inside awake. Think of it this way: creativity isn't a solo process. It's a dance between the conscious and the subconscious, the measurable and the mystical. The muse is the bridge between those worlds. There's an old myth that says inspiration comes like lightning, unpredictable, uncontrollable. But modern neuroscience paints a more fascinating picture. Inspiration is not random, it's relational. When you connect deeply with another person, your brain synchronizes with theirs. This is called inter-brain coupling. Measured by EEG and fMRI, it shows that when two people emotionally resonate, their brain waves literally align. In other words, when someone truly inspires you, they're not just influencing your thoughts, they're co-authoring them. That's why so many creators say things like, "She completes me," or "She understands me without words." It's not just poetic, it's neurological. The muse becomes part of your cognitive ecosystem, a living feedback loop of energy, emotion, and imagination. Now imagine being someone like Elon Musk, carrying the weight of industries, the expectations of billions, the endless pursuit of impossible dreams. In that solitude, the mind becomes an echo chamber. Every decision ripples across the planet. Every failure feels amplified. But what if, in the midst of that storm, there's someone whose presence quiets the noise, someone who reawakens the human beneath the engineer, the dreamer beneath the strategist. That is the power of a muse. She doesn't design the rocket. She gives the dreamer the courage to light it. Throughout history, muses have taken many forms. For Leonardo da Vinci, it was the enigmatic smile of a Florentine woman that became Mona Lisa. For Albert Einstein, it was the gentle, grounding intellect of his first wife, Mileva, who helped shape his early theories. For Elon, perhaps it's not about one relationship, but about a recurring pattern, the search for emotional resonance strong enough to match the magnitude of his ambition. Every genius needs an anchor. Without it, intelligence spins into obsession. Emotion tempers intellect. It gives it direction. It turns logic into legacy. And that's what makes this question, who is the woman he calls his muse, so fascinating. Because maybe the answer lies not in gossip or speculation, but in understanding the profound human truth behind it, that even the most powerful minds are powered by the most tender connections. Let's dive deeper into what neuroscience and psychology can teach us about this connection. You see, the human brain thrives on challenge and reward, a dance between effort and emotion. When someone falls deeply in love or becomes inspired by another person, the brain's reward centers flood with dopamine, the neurotransmitter that drives curiosity and exploration. But what's extraordinary is how that chemistry doesn't just make us feel good, it makes us perform better. It sharpens focus, accelerates learning, increases resilience to stress. So when someone like Musk speaks of a muse, consciously or subconsciously, he's acknowledging that part of his innovation isn't purely mechanical or intellectual. It's emotional fuel. It's the unseen energy behind the will to build. The muse becomes the emotional algorithm of genius. But there's another side to this, a paradox that every visionary faces. The same emotional intensity that fuels brilliance can also bring chaos. Because to open yourself to inspiration, you must open yourself to vulnerability. Love makes the brain unstable in the best and worst ways. It heightens creativity, yes, but it also amplifies fear of loss, rejection, and failure. The very same dopamine that gives you confidence can, in its absence, create despair. That's why so many innovators live on emotional extremes, oscillating between triumph and torment. It's not madness, it's chemistry. Their neural pathways are wired for intensity. Their muses don't just inspire them, they haunt them. But that haunting is often what keeps them human. When you look closely at the life of any great creator, you'll notice that their greatest works are not born from stability, but from longing. The muse, in her mysterious way, becomes both the wound and the remedy, the missing piece that keeps the dream alive. Maybe that's why, even with all his achievements, Elon Musk's personal life remains such a powerful enigma. Because behind the equations, there's always emotion. Behind the logic, there's always longing. And behind the man who builds the future, there's always a woman who reminds him of the present. When we strip away the rockets and algorithms, what we find is something profoundly human. A story as old as time. The story of how love, in all its complexity, continues to be the most advanced technology the universe has ever designed. And maybe that's where the secret lies, not in who the muse is, but in what she represents. Maybe the muse is not a person, but a frequency, a wavelength the mind tunes into when logic alone isn't enough. It's that subtle vibration between heart and intellect that tells the innovator, keep going. There's more to see. When we love, when we admire, when we are inspired by another human being, the boundaries of self begin to blur. Our goals are no longer only ours, they become shared, expanded, and infused with meaning. In neuroscience, there's a phenomenon known as limbic resonance, the synchronization of emotional states between two people. When you sit across from someone and your breathing patterns align, your hearts subtly synchronize, your pupils dilate at the same time. That's not imagination, that's biology. It's nature's design for connection. And in that moment of resonance, creativity spikes, problem solving accelerates, emotional stability increases. We don't create despite emotion, we create through it. So when the world asks, who is the woman Elon Musk calls his muse? Maybe the real question is, who is the person who creates resonance strong enough to stabilize a storm like his mind? Who gives the restless, analytical brain a heartbeat that reminds it why it started dreaming in the first place? There's an image that stays with me of a man standing before a rocket about to launch. Around him, noise, pressure equations, countdowns. But inside his mind, there's silence. A single thought, a single face, a single memory that grounds him. That image, that connection, becomes the emotional center of gravity around which his world revolves. Without it, the launch might still happen. But it wouldn't have meaning. That's what the Muse does. She gives meaning to motion. Now, let's talk about the science of this in a deeper way. Creativity isn't just about ideas, it's about emotional endurance. Every great creator faces resistance from the world, from themselves. Neuroscience shows that emotional regulation, the ability to stay calm under stress, is enhanced by emotional bonds. People who feel securely attached, whether romantically or through deep friendship, show higher resilience in their prefrontal cortex, the brain's decision-making center. This means that inspiration isn't merely emotional indulgence, it's a neurological advantage. The right relationship, the right connection, can literally rewire the brain for greatness. The Muse, then, is not just a figure of romance. She's a biological ally. She becomes a stabilizer for chaos, a silent co-architect of vision. Think of what this means for someone like Elon, a person whose ambitions span from the electric car to Mars, from artificial intelligence to neurotechnology. Each of these pursuits demands extraordinary persistence, bordering on obsession. But obsession, without grounding, burns out. What keeps that flame sustainable isn't just discipline. It's emotional regulation. And that regulation often comes from one thing: connection. When people wonder how one human being can keep going despite failure, ridicule, exhaustion, the answer often hides behind emotion. It's easier to endure the impossible when you're doing it for someone, or inspired by someone. The Muse becomes the invisible why behind the how. This isn't new. Artists have always understood it. Scientists too. The physicist Richard Feynman once said that his late wife, Arline, was the source of his deepest inspiration. That her presence and love stayed with him, even after she died, shaping his curiosity and joy for discovery. He called it the continuity of love and thought. The same applies to innovation. Love and thought, they are not separate domains. They are two sides of the same neural coin. When emotion enters logic, it doesn't corrupt it. It gives it color, urgency, and direction. The woman Elon Musk calls his Muse, whoever she is, may have given him not just companionship, but coherence. Because when the inner world feels aligned, the outer world becomes easier to build. And yet the Muse's power doesn't come from perfection. Paradoxically, it often comes from contradiction. The most inspiring people in our lives are not flawless, they are complex. They challenge us, frustrate us, force us to evolve. The Muse pushes the dreamer out of comfort into growth, and that tension, that friction, becomes the crucible of innovation. Every rocket begins with friction. Every flame needs resistance. And so does every idea. That's the hidden secret behind so many extraordinary relationships in the lives of creators. They are not peaceful, but powerful. They are not static, but transformative. The Muse is not there to calm the storm. She is the storm, and in weathering her, the genius finds his strength. Now, consider how that manifests in Elon Musk's world. His life is an orchestra of extremes. Logic versus emotion, ambition versus intimacy, control versus surrender. To be in that orbit, to influence that kind of mind, one must not merely be supportive, one must be magnetic. And that magnetism comes from authenticity. Neuroscience confirms that the human brain is hypersensitive to authenticity. We can detect insincerity in microseconds through subtle cues in facial expression and tone. But when we encounter someone authentic, someone real, unfiltered, emotionally courageous, our mirror neurons fire, and we feel safe to open up, to imagine, to dream. So perhaps the Muse is the one who makes authenticity possible. She reminds the dreamer that vulnerability is not weakness. It's the birthplace of creation. When the heart opens, the mind expands. Some of the world's greatest breakthroughs didn't come from laboratories, but from heartbreak, hope, and longing. It's in those deeply human moments, when logic fails and emotion rises, that the mind transcends its usual boundaries. That's why the Muse remains such a powerful archetype. She represents the mystery of why humans create in the first place. Because beneath all our technology, beneath all our data, there's still that yearning to be seen, to be understood, to be connected. And perhaps that's what drives even the most rational innovators. They build not just to advance humanity, but to express something profoundly personal, to say, I felt something, and I turned it into light. In that sense, the Muse isn't just a person, she's a process. She's the emotional algorithm that translates feeling into form, love into legacy. When Elon Musk stares at a rocket on the launch pad, he isn't just seeing machinery. He's seeing a reflection of every person who ever believed in him, challenged him, or loved him. Every failure, every heartbreak, every connection becomes fuel. The Muse is not beside him. She's within him, encoded in every risk he takes. Because in the end, genius is not the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it. And maybe that's the truest answer to the question we began with. Who is the woman he calls his Muse? She's the voice inside him that whispers, don't stop, keep building, keep feeling. She's the reminder that even as we reach for the stars, we are still human, fragile longing, beautifully incomplete. And maybe that's the paradox of progress. We build machines to escape limits, but it's love, unpredictable, uncontrollable, human love, that keeps us grounded. Every rocket that lifts, every dream that takes flight, carries a fingerprint of someone unseen. Someone who inspired, who hurt, who healed, who mattered. That's what makes human achievement divine. It's not built by logic alone, but by the stories we carry in our hearts. So, who is the Muse? She is not a name. She is a symbol. She is the spark that turns solitude into symphony, intellect into art, ambition into empathy. And perhaps, somewhere out there, she's watching the rockets rise, knowing that a small piece of her heart helped them reach the sky. Thank you.